Hi there, I'm Zach Kircher, and you're watching Kircher Talks Entertainment. I bid you welcome to the next episode in my series I Have Never Seen, which as the name suggests, I review movies I've never seen before. Specifically, older films that get voted on by all of you. For this sixth video in the series, originally I had planned on reviewing Cujo for my 2024 Halloween special, but then a lot of unforeseen things happened and then that video just kinda never materialized. To all of those people who were looking forward to that video,
I'm sorry.
but for those of you who were wondering what I thought of that movie, I read the book right after watching the movie in a packed theater, and yeah, the book is way better. Anyway, all of that is to say that while I failed to deliver on that video, I wasn't ready to give up on my I Have Never Seen series. When trying to decide what video to make for my Easter special, which I know I'm late, once again, the majority vote went towards me reviewing Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ. So I thought, hey, I still need to make my next I Have Never Seen video, so why not? So that's where we ended up today. If you're interested in helping decide future videos that will be part of this series, please consider subscribing to the channel and also watch out for posts on my community page. All of the reviews for this series will be decided by the polls which are featured on that community page. Now, as far as religious dramas go, over the years I've softened on the idea of watching, shall we say, controversial takes on religion, let alone Christianity, which is the belief system that I was raised up in and have still committed myself to this very day. Growing up in the home that I did, I always lived under the assumption that movies like The Exorcist would shake the very foundations upon which my faith rested. Adulthood has shifted my perspective on a lot of things, one of them being, instead of relying on cheesy faith films that heavy-handedly pander to a Christian's confirmation bias, I found myself gravitating towards films that are certainly bolder with their messages, but they feel a lot more human with what they're saying. And in watching movies like Martin Scorsese's Silence and Paul Schrader's First Reformed at pivotal moments in my early 20s, I have actually found that my faith has been deepened as a result of taking their themes to heart and then questioning Christianity's place in my life and the world around me. It's only fitting that this spiritual journey through cinema would continue years later with The Last Temptation of Christ, which was a passion project for both of those filmmakers I just mentioned. This was another movie that I felt sort of nervous about watching, given all of the controversy that surrounded it since 1988, when the movie originally released, but ultimately, I'm glad that I watched it. I don't think it entirely works on, as a movie per se, but on a spiritual level, it does serve as a very interesting exploration of man's innate desire to know if God really does exist. You see, there are a number of reasons why this movie has remained such a taboo piece of media over the years, but I could sum up its many controversies by saying that it tries to imagine what was going on in Jesus' head not just when he was lifted on the cross, but throughout his adult life. That concept on its own I actually find to be really interesting, but it's the execution thereof that I find to be a bit problematic from a theological standpoint. The film may open with a title card that states, "This film is not based on the Gospels," and yet much of the story lists narratives directly from the Gospels as they're found in the New Testament. Many of the most well-known episodes from the Gospels are depicted here, such as the Sermon on the Mount, raising Lazarus from the dead, and Jesus clearing out the money changers from the temple, to name a few, with all of these things being largely faithful to how they're depicted in the New Testament. Where the film tends to differ from the scriptures is that it dramatizes these events with dialogue that attempts to fill the gaps from what the Bible says. And like I said earlier, trying to delve deeper into what Jesus may have actually thought about all of this. It's a very human thing to want to know who God is and learn how he thinks. But once you start depicting Christ as someone trying to reconcile the faith within himself and dreaming about an alternate reality with Mary Magdalene as his wife while dying on the cross, it's no wonder why so many Christian organizations have openly condemned this movie like they're the Pharisees shunning Jesus himself. In other words, this movie tried to have its cake and eat it too. I can appreciate the artistic intent, believe me, I truly can. But if you're looking at this from a purely theological perspective, it doesn't quite work. Please understand that this is just my point of view on it, though. I've grown up believing that Jesus Christ was a sinless person in thought and deed, and after having read the contents of the Gospels many times throughout my life, That's still what I believe. The ancient Hebrews performed sacrifices with pure, unspotted lambs as an offering for sin, and the New Testament states that Christ's mission was to be the symbolic Lamb of God, a divine figure whose perfection would enable him to act as a sacrifice sufficient enough for all mankind. Because of that, I'll freely admit that I had an automatic bias against what this movie was trying to do. If you're someone who's familiar with the Bible, but doesn't necessarily believe its contents to be representative of history, or you're just not a Christian in general, this film's story, along with the original novel by Nikos Kazantzakis, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, it may be easier to reckon with. I'll also say that even when putting aside theology, there were some other problems with how the final product turned out. I didn't mind this movie's sense of pace at all, which is a credit to Martin Scorsese's longtime editor Thelma Schoonmaker for making this flow as well as it does. And I didn't even hate Harvey Keitel's performance as Judas, despite being a subject of mockery ever since this film first came out. He even got a Razzie nomination for this movie. Can you believe it? But no, my bigger issue on an objective level is that some aspects of this story just didn't really fit all that well with everything else. An example would be Christ's relationship with Mary Magdalene. For this character dynamic is a crucial aspect of the story, but it only gets a few scenes in the first hour or so, and then it largely gets forgotten about until the climax of the film. Many of Christ's disciples also talk frequently about whether the Jewish revolution will come about from Christ's presence in Jerusalem, and there isn't really much of a payoff to that. Maybe there wasn't supposed to be, but I'm someone who cares very deeply about a movie respecting the audience's time, so I'd like to think that they should have either let those elements come full circle, or just not include them at all. That speaks to this film at large, for it is built on a little bit of a messy story structure with some loose ends, rather than focus entirely on Christ's existential crisis. But ultimately, regardless of whether this depiction of Christ is faithful to the biblical text or not, his journey as a character in this movie is genuinely fascinating. For what it's worth, Martin Scorsese achieved the original author's goal of using Christ himself as a vessel for understanding human nature. We've gotten many examples of Christ figures over the years in fiction, such as Harry Potter and Aslan and the Chronicles of Narnia, but those characters can only go so far with trying to relate Christ to the average person. To have Jesus Christ be the actual stand-in is a bold choice, but one that allowed the filmmakers to tell a story that penetrates into the soul. Willem Dafoe's performance is crucial in that regard, for he did so much to make Christ's yearning for validation seem sincere. The struggle we see this version of Jesus face between given into baser human desires and to be the Messiah is one he conveys with confidence and emotional rawness. Plus, when Willem Dafoe needs to emphasize the righteous anger that Christ is known for, he really delivers. I especially love how hard this line goes when Jesus is fasting in the desert and Satan tries to tempt him.
Liar. Step into my circle so I can pull your tongue out.
Something I also greatly appreciate about Willem Dafoe's performance, which is also enhanced by the writing and Scorsese's direction, is how much he's able to capture just how radical Jesus' teachings would have felt to contemporary Jews. It can be easy for the average Christian to read his teachings in the New Testament and take it as gospel, but if you try to envision how people would have reacted to what Christ was preaching in public spaces, suddenly it becomes a lot tougher to truly comprehend how crazy people must have thought he was. Luckily, we have this movie to give us some idea of how much of a radical people may have perceived him to be, given how manically Scorsese stages these scenes where the people react to Christ's bold sermons. Here, he feels like a threat to the status quo, and I think that was the right approach. It definitely got me thinking pretty heavily as to whether I would have followed him after hearing his words. Again, I know that the last temptation of Christ is not meant to be taken as a direct interpretation of the scriptures, but I still came away from the experience appreciating what it was trying to say about man's yearning to know God. Isn't that what the Easter season is really about anyway? Whatever sort of place you may be at with your spirituality, I would hope you can agree that movies can be a great way to connect to ideas that are greater than yourself. A movie can have problems with its themes, story, performances, and even musical score like this one does. Yeah, I didn't think Peter Gabriel's music always fit. Sorry. But a movie's true value should be evaluated by what kind of feeling it leaves with you. Was it time well spent, and did it provide you with a new perspective on life? When all was said and done with this movie, I was grateful for what I experienced in spite of its flaws as an exercise in filmmaking and theology. I feel closer to God because of how much it made me think about Christ's role in my life, and what I should do to move past my own sins. It's a controversial movie for a reason, and I don't know if it's one that I would ever watch again due to its incongruence with the Bible itself, but I don't regret giving it a shot. I much prefer a movie that at least tried something special and unique rather than doing the bare minimum. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, for doing so really does help this channel grow, and I will see you all in the next one.